My jealous sister tried to ruin my baby shower by announcing fake paternity test results, but then her husband unexpectedly handed her divorce papers in front of everyone. I'm 30 and Minnie is almost 31. When we were kids, she often told me she was jealous of me and didn't like me. It hurt a lot because she was my only sister and I loved and admired her. I always looked up to her and tried to get closer, but she constantly pushed me away. When she was happy, she was a wonderful sister, fun, creative, but when we fought, she said horrible things and even tried to hurt me physically. She would hit, shove, and pull at me. I wanted to have a relationship with her, but she always hated me. Minnie was more outgoing and socially successful. She loved experimenting with hairstyles and had tattoos. Mum sent me to school early, and I ended up in the same class as Minnie. She didn't like that and saw me as a rival, especially because I was academically stronger. I consistently got A's and B's, while Minnie usually had C's and B's. Her strengths were in art, theatre, cooking, sewing, and dancing. I developed a love for the violin thanks to Mum, who encouraged me to pursue music, and I also became interested in French and Korean. Minnie was part of the school theatre group and spent evenings rehearsing plays. But one day she got kicked out of the theatre group after a fight. She discovered her boyfriend was cheating on her with another girl from the group, and in retaliation, she beat the girl and set her bag on fire. This incident led to Minnie being transferred to another school. Although the conflict was resolved, after our parents paid compensation to the other girl, Minnie had to repeat the 11th grade, and her relationship with our parents suffered greatly. My romantic relationships never lasted longer than 6 months, and it was always my sister's doing. Every time I got into a healthy relationship, she tried to sabotage it. Once, I really liked a guy named Derek, and things were getting serious. We were planning to introduce each other to our parents. Suddenly, a day before that, he blocked me everywhere: phone, messages, Facebook. Desperate, I went to his house uninvited to find out what happened. Derek confessed that Minnie had reached out to him, expressing concern and telling stories about my past that made me look bad. She told Derek that I was seeing other guys while dating him and even sent obscene photos to one of her friends. I was mortified. I tried to explain it was all lies, but Derek was confused, wondering why his girlfriend's own sister would lie like that. After long arguments, Minnie finally admitted she did it out of jealousy, thinking I was too good for Derek. She didn't care that she ruined our relationship. That incident was a turning point for me. I realized that if I wanted healthy relationships, I had to keep my distance from her. We both dreamed of studying abroad. Minnie had enormous potential, but her fear of the unknown led her to choose computer science in our home country, following Dad's advice. Watching this, I knew I didn't want my parents deciding my life for me. I worked hard to get a scholarship abroad. Despite my efforts, financial constraints prevented me from leaving, so I compromised by enrolling in a local university in a field I wanted. Still, my desire to study abroad never faded, and I kept looking for opportunities. Eventually, I got a scholarship and moved abroad to start fresh. My parents were sad to see me leave. On my last evening at home, Minnie apologized for everything she had done. I don't know what prompted her, maybe the fact that I was leaving so far away and she would now be alone with our parents. I didn't want to create drama, so I forgave her. Studying abroad changed me significantly. I lost weight, met new people, discovered my style, and gained confidence. Graduation was a milestone, but the next year was challenging as I tried to find a job. Eventually, I secured a good position and settled into my new life. Meanwhile, Minnie finished her bachelor's degree at home. She told me she wanted to pursue a master's degree in the country where I lived, and I supported her. She started applying for scholarships at various universities, but her applications kept getting rejected, leaving her increasingly frustrated. One day, she came to visit me for 10 days so I could show her around the city. She saw how much I had changed. When Minnie made little jabs at my clothes or hairstyle, I simply ignored her. It was strange that she tried to control what I wore or how I behaved in public, even when we went out to eat. Friends. She would tell me she didn't like them and that I should find better friends. Sometimes I would be spending time with my friends, and suddenly she would act strangely for no apparent reason. When I showed her my office, she was surprised at how big it was. I enthusiastically told her about the new opportunities in my career, but she stayed silent and didn't express any happiness for me. Instead, she shifted the conversation to herself, talking about how she wished she had the same opportunities and regretted some of her past decisions. Later, during dinner, she said she wanted to extend her stay and live with me. I realized I couldn't continue to be under her constant judgment, so I politely told her it would be better to find another place to stay if she wanted to remain, because it was obvious she had some issues with me she didn't want to discuss. T that moment, Minnie lost control. She started yelling that she was tired of my presence in her life, that everyone around her was always comparing her to me, and that her achievements were never enough. I pointed out that she had always made me feel inadequate. Minnie said there was nothing special about me and that she could have achieved the same things if she had had the same opportunities. I reminded her that we both started at the same point, she just hadn't worked as hard to apply to universities or secure a scholarship. Somehow, she blamed me for her lack of success. This enraged her even more. She called me a spoiled girl and said she regretted that I was even born. Those words hurt so deeply that I just stood up from the table and locked myself in my room. 2 days later, she left without even apologizing. Finally, I could breathe. I realized how much we had both changed over the years, and honestly, I began to feel some disgust toward her presence. Over time, I met my boyfriend James, who worked in the same field as me. Our paths kept crossing, and we had mutual friends who introduced us. It was so refreshing to talk to someone who understood my work. I thought we would just be friends, but he liked me, and the next day he asked me out. We started dating and were together for 2 years before he proposed. I grew close to his family since they lived in the same country, and he met my parents over a video call. We were already planning our wedding when I got offered a job that paid double what I earned at my current position. The only catch was that the new company was based in my home country. I discussed it with James, and we both agreed it was a great opportunity. I accepted the offer and returned home, where my family finally met James. My parents adored him, and now every Sunday my father plays golf with him. Everything was going well at my new job, and James soon found a good position too. Meanwhile, Minnie avoided me like the plague. She refused to meet me and James, even though my parents insisted. She made up random excuses to avoid seeing us. We hadn't spoken for a long time, and I understood her unwillingness. It honestly suited me. I was worried that she might try to sabotage my relationship with James, as she had done before. After several months back in my home country, James and I decided to get married. We bought tickets for his parents and grandparents so they could attend. We wanted a small, intimate wedding just for family and close friends, plus a short honeymoon because we were both busy at work. We held the wedding in my parents' huge backyard, and they were thrilled. Grandparents, parents, siblings, and friends gave speeches, showering us with love and blessings. The only person absent was Minnie. She claimed she was sick and couldn't attend. The food was wonderful, everyone danced until midnight, and we had an amazing time. A week later, James and I went on our honeymoon. After returning, I was at my mum's showing her photos from the wedding when Minnie appeared. While I was telling Mum how happy the grandparents were, Minnie interrupted, asking if James and I were struggling financially. I laughed and told her that I now had a job with a much higher salary than before, and James was doing well too. She sarcastically remarked that maybe it wasn't true since I chose to have a backyard wedding at my parents' house. Mum defended me, saying there was nothing wrong with it and that I had wanted a modest wedding, which made perfect sense. I agreed and told Minnie that I appreciated her concern. James and I simply didn't like unnecessary extravagance, despite our high incomes, and preferred to spend money wisely. Minnie was furious when she heard this. She said I was bragging, as always, and probably lying about my salary. I shook my head and calmly responded that I didn't need to brag in front of her. I added that we were no longer children, and it was time for her to grow up and stop making up stories about me. I also told her that was precisely why I was glad she hadn't come to my wedding. This enraged her, and she left crying. Mum tried to smooth things over, but Minnie wouldn't listen. Later, she told our grandparents and some of my cousins about our argument and about how I had supposedly been glad she hadn't attended the wedding. I sent her a message apologizing, but she didn't bother replying. Over the years, I tried to stay away from her, even though we had a few pleasant moments. James eventually met her, but she immediately disliked him. She constantly mocked him. For example, we both liked Disney movies, which Minnie found boring. and she claimed James wasn't manly enough. I was deeply hurt by her words, and later she apologized to both me and James. Minnie had also repeatedly told Mum that James was supposedly trying to control my life. When Mum confronted her, she said she just had a bad feeling every time she met him. One day, when Mum and Minnie came over for lunch, Minnie talked about problems with her boyfriend, Larry. It turned out Larry had moved in with Minnie but lost his job after 2 months and hadn't contributed financially since. I firmly told Minnie she needed to kick him out, as he clearly wasn't pulling his weight. Then unexpectedly, Minnie asked, since I earn more than James, should I also kick him out? I explained that although I earned more than James, he still brought in enough income for our household and didn't sit all day eating chips and playing video games. Mum agreed and added that James had even sacrificed part of his career so I could take this higher paying job. Minnie reacted angrily, saying that men should always earn more and that it was strange James was fine with the situation. I calmly replied that not all men had fragile egos like hers had experienced and that James loved me just as I was. Of course, Minnie didn't listen and eventually married Larry. Despite his unemployment, Larry had a volatile temper, which became evident at their wedding when he got drunk and started a random argument with a waiter. Minnie and some of his brothers had to restrain him. It was extremely awkward, and I felt a little worried for Minnie, but I knew she would never take my advice, so I stayed silent. Over time, I noticed the fights between Minnie and Larry only increased, because every time they argued, he would kick her out of the house, and she would spend the night at our parents'. They were worried about her, but Minnie refused to talk to them. Eventually, we learned from Larry's mother that Minnie had apparently cheated on him with a colleague. They had a huge fight but decided to try to save the marriage, even attending couples therapy. This year, I found out I was pregnant. James and I were overjoyed. My parents congratulated us and said how proud they would soon become grandparents, assuring me they would help every step of the way. When Minnie learned about the pregnancy, she asked about the names we liked. James and I had already discussed a few options, but I didn't want to share them with her because I knew how judgmental she could be. I said a firm no and explained that the name would be announced only after the baby was born and officially chosen. Minnie insisted it was a terrible idea, claiming we should discuss names with other family members to choose the best one. I told her I didn't want anyone interfering with the choice because it was our child and we would name him as we wished. Later, it was time for my baby shower, a party for the mother to be where guests give gifts. I asked Mum to organize everything. I trusted her and didn't enjoy planning parties anyway. I also asked Mum to tell everyone not to bring gifts yet, as we didn't know the baby's gender. I just wanted to have a good time with friends, whom I hadn't seen in a long time, and learn more about motherhood. On the day of the party, I was pleasantly surprised that Mum invited only my close friends, just as I had wanted. I was having a wonderful time talking with them. Then Minnie showed up wearing a t-shirt that said "Future Godmother." My eyes widened in shock. Under no circumstances had I planned for her to be my child's godmother. It was awkward because Minnie kept telling everyone how she had dreamed of being a godmother, which irritated me even more. She hadn't even discussed it with me. As the party was winding down, Mum invited my husband, father, and Larry to join us, since we were about to reveal the baby's gender. When James and I cut the cake, we were thrilled to learn we were having a boy. Tears streamed down my face, and my friends hugged me. Suddenly, Minnie stood up and said she needed to say something very important. Everyone fell silent and looked at her with curiosity. She looked very serious as she pulled out a document and raised it in front of everyone. Then, she suddenly announced that, a few days ago, she had supposedly conducted a paternity test and discovered that James wasn't the father of my baby. She dramatically claimed the results pointed to someone else. The room fell silent, and James looked visibly shaken. He turned to me and asked what was going on and if what she said was true. I shook my head and stared at her, waiting for an explanation. My mum, clearly frustrated, demanded to know what nonsense this was and why she was making up such ridiculous stories. She snatched the papers from Minnie's hands and immediately noticed that my name wasn't even listed as the mother. At that moment, Minnie started laughing. My friends looked at me in shock while she wore a smug expression. Finally, Minnie admitted she had downloaded a fake paternity test online and concocted the entire scheme to prove something. She claimed she wanted to expose James as an abuser. Everyone in the room was stunned. I asked Minnie if she was serious, reminding her that James had never once raised his voice at me, let alone been abusive. She started rambling about how a man supposedly couldn't be happy if his partner earned more than him and insisted she had long suspected James of controlling me. She cited random examples and claimed that James had gotten angry when she first mentioned the test. I yelled at her, saying that the only reason James was upset was that she had publicly humiliated me by claiming our child wasn't his. I explained that James had never mistreated me or thrown me out of our home, and that perhaps she was projecting her own issues onto me. I saw her face turn red with embarrassment. I went on, telling her I was sick and tired of her jealousy and how disgusting it was that she had turned my baby shower into a circus. I reminded everyone of Minnie's long history of lying about me to my ex-boyfriends. She stood there, humiliated. My mum told her she had gone too far this time. Then, in the awkward silence, her husband Larry, who had been quiet until then, stood up and approached her. To everyone's shock, he handed her some papers. Minnie asked what they were. Larry explained that couples therapy clearly hadn't worked and that he had realized they were toxic for each other. He told Minnie he had considered divorcing her and had planned to hand her the papers that evening, but since she liked creating dramatic scenes, he could no longer return home to her. He said he was done with the drama and walked out of the party. The room went silent, guests exchanging awkward glances. Minnie, stunned and holding the divorce papers, had attempted to ruin my baby shower, but instead, her own marriage collapsed before everyone's eyes. What had been a joyful celebration turned into a tense, grim situation as everyone realized what had just happened. I decided I had enough. I asked James to take me home, and he immediately agreed. I hugged my mum goodbye, and she promised to call me later. Minnie tried to approach and apologize, but I didn't even look at her. As you can imagine, everyone was in shock over the events. People called to check if I was okay, and some mentioned that Minnie had started crying as soon as she left. My parents kicked her out, refusing to listen to her excuses. I felt a twinge of sympathy for her, realizing she had lost not only me, but also our parents and her husband. I also felt a little guilty for yelling at her, though at the time it seemed justified. Was I wrong to call out her jealousy in front of everyone after she tried to pass off a fake paternity test? Let's discuss in the comments point by point. Update 1. A month has passed since the baby shower. I spoke with my parents about my sister, and we all agreed it was best to cut ties completely. Minnie shows no remorse and tells everyone I supposedly threw a massive fit over her prank, publicly bringing up her past in front of her husband, which she believes led to the divorce. Since then, Larry spoke to my parents and apologized for how he treated Minnie in the past. He clarified that he hadn't abused her. During their fights, she would hit him, leaving him feeling unsafe. He even showed pictures of his broken nose and bruises. Thankfully, Larry loved her enough not to involve the police otherwise. Minnie would have been in serious trouble long ago. It was clear their relationship had been toxic, and honestly, I'm relieved they're divorcing. My parents spoke firmly to Minnie, making it clear they no longer wanted her in their home. She cried, but my mum was furious after what she had done at the baby shower, saying that if Minnie ever approached me or my child, she would face a restraining order. They also told her to seek psychiatric help, as her mental health was clearly unstable. Minnie refused, claiming my parents were unfair for supporting me more than her. I blocked her everywhere, and so did James. We installed security cameras at home, and if she ever shows up, I will immediately involve the authorities. Update 2. 8 months later, I'm overjoyed to share that I recently gave birth to a baby boy. The pregnancy was challenging, but I'm thrilled to have our son with us. We named him Alex. I can't believe I'm finally a mother. Our home is filled with the laughter and cries of our little one. James and I are settling into parenthood and savoring every moment despite the challenges. My parents support us every day as I adjust to this new chapter. Next month, James's parents will be visiting. Minnie hasn't bothered us since. The last I heard, she and Larry divorced, and she decided to pack up and move to another city, possibly to start fresh. It's sad that my own sister is no longer part of my life, but as a mother, I must protect my child.